From 1931 to 1986, one determined woman set out across the nation to advocate for the future of a marginalized community, carrying with her a new bottom-up model of black empowerment in her ambition for change. Through her relentless battles and unwavering commitment to better conditions for African Americans in the United States, she would ultimately redefine methods of advocacy in the civil rights movement and inspire a generation of activists to come. Born in 1903, Ella Baker grew up in Norfolk, Virginia, until a race riot against black shipyard workers in 1910 caused her family to move to her grandparents' home in North Carolina, where her grandparents told her stories of how the communities they made as slaves gave them resilience in a bleak life. And at the same time, both her mother, Anna Ross Baker, and the local church pushed a repeated emphasis of helping others regardless of their class. From these influences as an impressionable child, Baker quickly developed a strong sense of social justice that left her with a burning desire for change well into her teens. Accordingly, she applied to Shaw University, where she led multiple protests. 4 years later, she graduated top of her class as a sociology major, having learned the skills to challenge authority and question the status quo. After graduation in 1927, Baker moved to Harlem and found a job as an editorial assistant at the Negro National News, where she was mentored by her colleague George Schuler. In her free time, she joined several civil rights interest groups such as the YWCA and the Negro History Club. Although members of these groups often looked down on her due to her gender, and even though she was oftentimes the only woman in attendance at gatherings, she persevered and honed her skills through academic discussions in Harlem. Here, she gained exposure to what she called a hotbed of radical thinking, and in 1930, she co-founded the Young Negroes Cooperative League, or the YNCL, with her mentor George Schuler. As the behind-the-scenes strategist for the YNCL, Baker pursued her growing vision that grassroots or bottom-up activism should be a core focus of the civil rights movement. She combined her desire for social justice and her compassion towards working-class African Americans to lead several conferences within Harlem that directly involved members of the community. However, due to the YNCL's founding at the peak of the Great Depression, there was little charity to fund the organization, and ultimately it failed due to a lack of capital. Although the YNCL was not a resounding success, this short-lived experiment in collective black self-determination left Baker with a wealth of political experience on how to organize grassroots movements. After the failure of her organization, Ella Baker was left unemployed, wandering to whatever establishment offered her a part-time job. In her wanderings, she stumbled upon the Workers' Education Project, or the WEP, that was created as a part of the New Deal, in which she helped student workers develop critical consciousness about the position of African Americans in society. Through her contributions to the WEP, she built a reputation as a talented cooperative educator and organizer. Accordingly, she quickly moved on from the Workers' Education Project and landed a job as a field secretary at the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or the NAACP, in 1941. Even though the NAACP focused on societal change through the middle class, Ella Baker held a different approach.
For someone like Ella Baker, the larger you become and the more dependent you become on fundraising, the less militant you can be, because you might lose some of your funding. So her view is, yeah, you're big and you've got lots of members, but they don't really do very much.
Accordingly, she used her position as a field secretary to encourage local leadership and grassroots organizing in her community. Namely, she gave speeches 4 to 5 times a week in mass meetings that mobilized people, rich or poor, and established lasting relationships with her audience. She often slept in their homes, spoke at their churches, and ate at their tables, earning their trust. This personalized approach allowed her to recruit more NAACP members, eventually growing her outreach network to include many famous activists at the time. But her grassroots efforts did not just stop there. Indeed, even from within, Baker was fighting to make the NAACP more democratic. After climbing the ranks, Baker was appointed to the Director of Branches, which she used as a platform to help reduce the organization's strict bureaucratic structure. Regardless, her dissension was ignored due to her gender, and she was left powerless in redirecting the organization's focus from a top-down to a grassroots approach. So, in 1946, she resigned from her position. Over the next decade, Baker continued her advocacy, piecing together an income through a series of odd jobs with several civil rights and community service establishments, aiding grassroots movements around the country. But then, in the mid-1950s, as Brown v. Board of Education was making headlines and civil rights activism was on the rise, Baker re-entered the main stage, founding the fundraising organization In Friendship. Established to funnel resources to sustain the Montgomery bus boycotts, In Friendship held campaigns and rallies to support the working class people participating in this grassroots movement. Just as the implications of the boycott became clear to the nation, so too did Baker realize that a northern-based fundraising organization would help sustain their direct action efforts. Through In Friendship, she raised thousands of dollars that she used to support the bus boycotts, which marked a huge victory for civil rights and the desegregation of buses. After this triumph, Baker co-founded the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, or the SCLC, in 1957 alongside Martin Luther King Jr. himself and other leaders, which aimed to bring about social justice through existing black churches. Through the SCLC, she organized several campaigns, including the 1958 Crusade of Citizenship, a voter registration campaign. However, akin to her treatment in the NAACP and in Harlem, even in the SCLC, she was looked down on due to her gender, leaving her frustrated. Despite these sentiments, however, Baker carried on working in the SCLC until in 1960, when Dr. King ordered her to add some student activists to the organization to create a new student branch. She organized a meeting for student activists in the SCLC to meet at Shaw University, but Baker had plans unbeknownst to her organization. Instead of encouraging the students to join the SCLC, she told them to look to themselves and no one else for their answers, saying, "Strong people don't need strong leaders." Accordingly, after the meeting, the students decided that rather than join the SCLC, they would create their own organization, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC. The students took on Baker's ideals as their own, making SNCC an organization focused on group-centered leadership to give power to the people doing the work, regardless of their gender. Soon thereafter, Baker left the leader-centered SCLC to focus her efforts on SNCC, using her experience from her role in the Workers' Education Project to educate the students on how to organize effectively and encourage local leadership. Indeed, she told the students that they were not the leaders, but rather the organizers of local grassroots-based movements.
But I think what SNCC tried to do was say, we want to come and help you do the work. You know, we're not interested in setting up an office and analyzing the problem. You know what the problem is. We're there to try to help.
Through this ideology, SNCC was slowly taking off, recruiting protesters across the country and bolstering their movements. And despite police harassment and KKK attacks, by 1962 SNCC was involved in voter registration campaigns from Georgia to Mississippi, and by 1963 it was on the national stage, playing a pivotal role in organizing the Civil Rights March on Washington. And unlike other civil rights organizations of its time, SNCC even challenged the dominant role of men with its participation in the Women's March of 1963. In the years to come, SNCC continued to play a prominent role in civil rights advocacy, being a core activist group for the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Black Power movement in 1966. In its activism, SNCC focused its efforts not in speeches or one-time demonstrations, but rather on developing community groups that would organize protests to give power back to the people. Because as Ella Baker liked to say, give light and people will find the way. Through her endeavors in SNCC, SCLC, YMCL, and the NAACP, Ella Baker introduced America to a new bottom-up model of black empowerment, inspiring communal activism that can still be seen today. As SNCC project director Annie Pearl Avery says, "I was on the Edmund Pettus Bridge during Bloody Sunday in 1965, and I am still standing up for right today." Another SNCC member and field secretary, Hollins Watkins, went on to found the Southern Echo, a modern civil rights organization that aims to expand the capacity for grassroots movements in African American communities.
Roots up rather than from the top down, that it gets more work done for less expenditure of funds.
Ella Baker was a pioneer for grassroots activism in the civil rights movement, inspiring communal action that can still be seen to this day. Her model of bottom-up activism showed young African Americans that they can act independently to create the change they want to see, ushering in a new generation of activists who have fought and continue to fight for their equality today.